Hello, I'm Mike Graham with Midwestern Securities, and welcome to this episode of Banking on Growth. With us today, we have our friend Kathryn Spitznagle from Mentoring Women Millennials. Kathryn, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Mike.
I really appreciate you joining us. You and I go back probably 15 or 16 years,
I know.
and I've always been impressed with your professionalism in your prior career, and I'm thankful that we were able to reconnect this fall and learn about some of the work that you've been doing to help individuals and businesses. Will you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your history, your professional history, and where you are right now and what you're most excited about?
Okay, sure. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me today. And I was happy to reconnect with you. So Michael and I met when I worked at Caterpillar. I retired from there a few years ago. So my corporate career was with both Purina in St. Louis and then Caterpillar in some different locations. So mostly corporate communications, public affairs, governmental affairs, that sort of background. And when I worked at Purina, it was very much a mentoring culture. When you began at Purina, you were introduced to a leader mentor, a peer mentor, and in 90 days you were mentoring. Everyone mentored. And so when I went to Caterpillar, that was a natural for me. And there weren't a lot of women. And so as a woman's announcement would come across that she was joining Caterpillar, I would reach out to her and say, do you have a mentor or would you like one? And for 22 years, they all said yes. And so I was grateful to get to know a lot of wonderful women through that time. And then as I was retiring, my announcement went out. These women came back and said, we'd like for you to start a mentoring company, a mentoring business, and we will help you. And they did, and I did. And so that's where we are. They encouraged me to, of course, create a website, write a book, start a podcast, and they helped me with all of those things. And so that was the genesis of Mentoring Women Millennials.
So I know that you've been doing great work, and I know that you speak from a position of authority. But tell our audience what mentoring is to you and the impact that you want it to have on people that you interact with.
Okay, and I learned this, at Purina. Their mission statement was, we cherish our people. Didn't talk a lot about the business or where they were going and the financials. It was about the people. And when I started there, they said, never confuse what we make with why we're here. We're here to develop people for life. And so that was my focus going forward, developing people. One of the great leaders I had at Purina, Neil Lewis, would say to me, developing people isn't efficient. There's not a quick way to do it. So it's not efficient in the short term, but it's very effective in the long term. And we're in this for the long term. And so he really worked with me on a servant leadership style and one where I would develop people as they were growing in their careers.
I love that. And it brings a depth of importance to it, the way that you describe it. I think sometimes people may think of mentoring as just being a role model. And being a role model is very powerful. But I think the phrase developing people is deeper than being a role model. Both are incredibly important, both are life-changing, but developing people runs deeper, in my opinion.
Yes.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say that's the way Neil described it too. He said, we're not managing and we're not just leading people, we're developing people and we're changing lives. That was a whole different purpose for me. We're changing lives.
Yeah. So, we work primarily with community banks and credit unions, helping them build and manage successful, profitable, and compliant retail investment services divisions. That inside of community banks, we're one of their business lines. Banks still take deposits, still make loans, issue credit cards. Right? They have these other lines um, that become silos. They become cultures of their own, and there becomes territorialism, probably just like Purina and Caterpillar, any business, any entity. Um, what advice can you give one of these financial institution leaders who are listening to this podcast to help create interdepartmental connections and investments to develop people and break down some of these silos?
Yes, and as you say, that's a universal issue in all industries, all companies, even in small business. I work with a lot of small business too, and that it's very common, to be siloed. A couple things that I've learned through the years: get to know your people, know who those people are, understand, what their needs are, what their issues are, where they're sitting every day. Neil would always say, if you're asking two questions, what do they need and how can I help them? You're on the right path. And I think that works with employees. It also works with business partners. And certainly saw that at Caterpillar, with silos all around the world. And so it could be geographical, it could be cultural, and it could be product related. And I found meeting them where they were, if that meant, in their country, better understanding their culture, working in their time zone, on their shift, all of those things went a long way in opening the lines of communication. And then, what is it they were trying to accomplish and how could we help them? Particularly when I worked in corporate, when those were the first questions, what do you need and how can I help you? You saw some of the barriers start to break down.
So let's just kind of play this out a little bit. So you're the president of a community bank. You've got, say, 5 branches, 5 branch managers, and different silos. How do you start this process? You're a lot of the community financial institutions that we work with. The president is also, they might be taking a loan application, right? They may or may not have an administrative assistant. Um, they've got a lot of different multitasking that's got to happen. Um, if you're a consultant looking in a situation like that, you see this leader probably overburdened, um,
Right.
uh, you know, uh, an inch deep and a mile wide in
Yeah.
their organization. How do they get started? What would be a couple of very simple steps for them to get started to understand what their people need to help and then invest to develop their people?
Couple really simple things. I don't have a silver bullet, but if I did, this would be it. One-on-one meetings. Those are probably the most impactful conversation that you can have. One-on-one meetings with your people, and whether that's weekly or biweekly or monthly. And then the second would be a team meeting. How often are you bringing that team together? Is that, again, weekly, biweekly, monthly? But bringing them together so they understand, what are all these different people doing? And I use the same format or approach for both the one-on-one meetings and the team meetings. Purina called it a 3-bucket, format. And I think as you and I have talked, I found, particularly at Caterpillar, that it was universal. I mentored people around the world, and this process worked through different cultures, different geographies, different languages. You're basically asking three questions or three buckets of things. Number one is, what are we celebrating? Because we often pass through those things so quickly. It's like, yep, got it, on to another thing, particularly like you say, the branch manager who's doing some of everything. So asking, those individuals, what are we celebrating today? What have you learned, accomplished, inside work or outside work? What is it that you're so proud of? Let's take a minute to revel today. So that's number one. Number two is, what's kind of on your to-do list? What's in that bucket where I've got to get this done, maybe not sure how to approach it. Maybe that's a time where they really sort of step through, here are all the things. And as a leader, you realize maybe this person is more heavily burdened than others, or this person has a lot of capacity. So that is also, that dialogue is informative. The third question or bucket, which is the most informative, is what in the world? What has caught you by surprise? What seems overwhelming? Is there something you need to do and you don't know where to start? That's really where you understand where that person is sitting. And if they are overloaded, if their skills aren't completely matched, if they need some development, and just working through that with them and making it a safe space. And I love that at Purina that they said, here we learn to fess it and fix it. And the faster we fail, the faster we advance. And so we think that's so important. We're going to talk about it every week. What is it that overwhelms you? What is it you don't know where to start? And it was a safe space. And so then you got through those things very quickly. You failed quickly and moved on. And I'd have the same kind of dialogue with our team. What are we celebrating this week? What do we have on our to-do list? What's everybody got? And is there anything that seems overwhelming, caught us by surprise? We don't know where to start. Let's fess it and fix it and move it to that second bucket that's a to-do, and then move it to something we celebrate.
Good. That's really good. I think that's really intimidating for a lot of people to get to that point of just a lot of times leaders, the president of an institution, a smaller financial institution like we work with, generally under $1 billion in deposits, and they know their job, they know their bank really well, but they may not know people as well or investing in people as well, and it becomes a little intimidating. They don't even know where to start. So that's really good, just giving them some steps on where to start. It starts with intentionality, time regularly together, and three quick questions. Just what are we celebrating? What are our to-dos? What in the world? What do we need to confess and fix quickly, right? If it's wrong, fail quickly, move past it quickly.
Yeah. And everybody learns from that then. And as a leader, when I would see patterns, I go, okay, 4 out of 5 of these people were struggling with this directive, this goal, this communication, whatever. Then it's okay. Then that's maybe on me. Do I need to communicate differently? Do they need a process? What is it? And that's, again, the value of these one-on-ones and then the team meetings. The other feedback that I heard most often from teams was, I didn't know what everybody else did. And it's a lot easier to judge when you don't know. When everyone says in the team meeting, this is what I've got going. And as we become more vulnerable with one another, it's okay to say, this is where I could use some help. Or I've got a little spare time this week. And that's when you start to see a magic happen.
Yeah, yeah. When we talk with our staff about managing, we talk with financial advisors who are in the field in their branch, and they're starting to build a team of administrative support as well as other financial advisors. We've historically said it starts with time. You show that you care by investing, by giving some of your time to be with them. With a little bit of the Abraham Lincoln saying, I think Abraham Lincoln said something to the effect of, "I don't like that person. I should probably get to know them better." Right? And how do you get to know somebody better other than spending time with them? And then when you're spending time with them, then you understand how they're spending their time. What are they doing and what aren't they doing? That's what we've done as we're working with financial advisors on building their management process of their team inside of their institution. But I really like adding in those three buckets that you have into that. Now, people, we've got to invest in people, but how do you make sure that you have the right people on your team? And when do you make a change? Is there any guidance that you could give some of these institution leaders that are listening?
Well, Neil often said to us as his leaders, if you want happy people, hire happy people. Hire people with that positive sort of can-do attitude, and then perpetuate that culture. And I often said that Purina had probably the best culture where I ever worked, best leadership. They also had the highest level of accountability. And so one of the things you and I have talked about is, kind of one of their underlying rules for communication at Purina was everything you say should either be positive or productive. Not everything's going to be positive, but if it's not positive, make it productive. Ask how and what questions work toward a solution. And they just didn't tolerate the negativity. And they would, pull you aside and say, that's not how we work here. We encourage each other, we help each other. If we make a mistake, we fess it and fix it and move on. And if this culture doesn't work for you, that's okay. But we're not changing. So, and as a leader, a young novice leader, and as I've said to you, a lousy leader, when I first went to Purina, one of the things Neil often said to me was choose to change. And I said, well, that's just not the way I'm wired. And he said, choose to change. This is how we lead. And if you want to work and live and thrive in this culture, it's a choice. Choose to change.
So it is leadership and intentionality. It doesn't happen by accident. And we've all probably seen and worked in organizations where we just avoid conflict, avoid confrontation, hope it gets better tomorrow, hope somebody shows up with a better attitude tomorrow, hope somebody is more effective tomorrow. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens with intentionality, reinforcement, and hard work.
And holding people accountable and saying, you know what, we don't need that here.
Mm-hmm. So when they are effective, how do you recognize and acknowledge achievements and celebrate those achievements? Do you have any examples of that throughout your career?
Yes. One of the books I often refer to, and we read it at Purina, was the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. And for different people, they have a different language of how they like to be recognized. It might be words of affirmation. It might be, as you said earlier, spending time with someone. Might be a gift, which could be something as simple as a card. It might be a physical touch or, a handshake. So people have different languages that appeal to them. And that is one of the questions I ask people as they're on my team and we're doing our one-on-ones. I'll say, okay, here's some languages. What appeals to you? How do you like to be recognized? And they'll tell you. I also would ask, we did this at Caterpillar, what demonstrates genuine concern for you? And they would tell you, well, come and talk to me, get to know me, get to know my kids, get to know some personal things about me. I'd also ask, how do you like to be recognized? Not only what's the language, but it's the what and the how. Do you like it privately? Do you like more of a public pronunciation? Do you like something written? Do you like something spoken? What resonates with you? And that, these little nuances are the difference between a culture where someone is just acknowledged and someone is cherished.
So, Kathryn, you've shared this concept of a hero page, kind of building off of what you just shared with us, getting to know them better. Would you expand on that and what a hero page is and how you use it?
Yes. So again, another thing that we used at Purina, and they said, start with yourself. Do your own hero page. Make a list of your kind of top 10 accomplishments, things you've accomplished, successes you've had, tough things you've lived through. Kind of make that list and take a picture of it and keep it on your phone. And when you hit a stumbling block or a tough day, take a look at that and just remind yourself who you are and what you're capable of. You said, okay, now, once you've done that, you understand how to do it for yourself. Let's do the same thing for some others. And they called it a hero page. And they said, on that page, as you get to know them, write those things down. What have you learned about them? What do you respect and admire about them? What values do they demonstrate that resonate with you? And so as you're learning these things, as their leader and as their peer, there's a place. So 3 reasons we do that. 1, we do a hero page because it encourages us to look and to write something down. The second reason we do that is someday you're going to have a tough day with that person. And if you go back and look at their hero page, you go, yeah, these are all the things I respect and admire. And yeah, that gives me some perspective. Today was an off day. The third reason is they may have a tough day sometime. And what a gift you can be to them to talk about, to remind them, are you the person that did these things? And I think I shared with you when we'd met before, when I was at Caterpillar, I was mentoring someone in Beijing, China, and my boss had also been transferred there for a short-term assignment. And they were creating an HR department in a very rural community. And I didn't have a concept of it, in corporate. And they let me know that. They said, here's what we're dealing with. We are working in a tent. We're paying people in chickens. And we send out a bus to the rural countryside. And as people get on, they're coming to work. And if dad can't come, he puts mom on. And if mom can't come, she puts a couple kids on the bus. So from day to day, we don't know who's coming, how long they're going to be there. The only things we know for sure are when they get on our bus, they're coming to work. They're going to get paid. We're going to feed them 2 meals, and we're going to take them back to their countryside. Those are the things we know. So she wanted me to understand, okay, here's what we're trying to create, a corporate entity in this environment. So understand what we're dealing with. And so Megan, the person I was mentoring, called me one day and said, our boss is struggling. She's having a hard time today. Can we get on a call? And I said, absolutely, give me a minute. And she said, you're going to get her hero page. I said, yes, I am. And so we got on the phone and I said, Lois, Kathryn, is this the woman who led the first new product introduction as a woman, as a female accountant out of the tractors division of Caterpillar, which is the flagship? And she said, yes. And I said, is this the woman who was handed a t-shirt and a belt buckle and created merchandising stores all over the world for Caterpillar? Yes. Is this the woman who's had a 30+ year happy marriage, raised 2 amazing children, and showed us all it could be done? And she said, yes. I said, okay. The woman who did those things can tackle whatever's in front of her today. Yes. Okay. What a gift you would be to another leader, to a peer. You have that information. If they're having a tough day, to be that encouragement, to be that support, to help them feel cherished.
Powerful. So you create a hero page in your CRM, potentially, that is protected so only you can see it.
Only you see it, yep.
And you have it at your fingertips. You can pull it up to bring out those words of affirmation. Are you familiar with David Goggins?
No. Tell me about him.
David Goggins is an author also. So we'd like at some point before we wrap up today for you to talk about your book as well. But David Goggins is an overcomer story, an abused child raised by an abused mother. Their father was a pimp running prostitutes out of a bowling alley. David had everything set against him, learning disabilities, working at the bowling alley at night, too tired to go to school during the day, breaks away, raised by his mother and his grandparents. Anyways, David overcomes lots of hurdles. He's an influencer in a lot of fitness circles. He's an extreme runner, extreme athlete. He's an American hero. He's a Navy SEAL, an Army Ranger, went to Delta Force training twice, didn't complete Delta Force training twice because of injuries, but did complete SEAL and Ranger training. He's a very decorated American hero. And he became, I think you could refer to him as the face of the Navy for a while. He was a top recruiter for the Navy. He's very colorful and he's very gritty. He's very abrasive type of, I can overcome it all regardless of how high the hurdles are. Again, very gritty delivery style, but very motivating, and he has a big following. He calls what you're referring to as a cookie jar. You have to remember your wins. You put your wins in a cookie jar, and when you're feeling beat down, you're having the day like the lady in China was having that type of day. You've got to have a cookie jar that you can reach into and you can pull something out that revalidates, re-energizes, boosts your confidence, gets you through those hurdles.
All of that. Yeah. It's so important. Yeah.
Life is challenging. There's lots of stress that we all deal with, and people are dealing with issues that we don't know, what might be sidetracking them that day. So more words of affirmation, more tools and techniques to deal the cookie jar type of how do we get through these days and wait for tomorrow, a fresh start, get a good night's sleep, get some food, get some exercise, clear your head, and hit it again tomorrow. So these things that you're talking about are all really important. A lot of small businesses, a lot of community banks that we work with like I said, are very busy. They are stretched very thin. I think you've given the audience some good takeaways that are simple, that
Yeah.
are powerful takeaways. Let me ask for words of caution, though. When they go out and they start to take some of these things and they start to take some of these steps, what are stumbling blocks that could derail them? What do they need to do to make sure that this idea, these ideas of a hero page, of intentionally fighting for a cherished culture inside of your organization get implemented? We've got some energy. Now we're going to go take some of these steps. We're going to schedule some meetings. We're going to follow the 3 buckets. But then what goes wrong? What guidance can you give them to make sure that 6 months from now there's momentum continuing?
One of the questions I'm often asked when I speak about this is, what if you have someone who doesn't want to interact with you? And that happens. That's very real, particularly in an engineering manufacturing company. We had a lot of introverts who are like, man, I don't want to talk about any of that. Okay. And so if that's a hurdle that you have employees, putting up a wall, observe, see who they're talking with, watch a little more closely. Are there things I can pick up from just watching them? Maybe even ask those that they interact with more. I'd like to do something nice for so-and-so. I'm not sure how to approach. Do you know a little bit about their family or their children or their hobbies or something? So that's one hurdle. Another hurdle is forgiveness. Forgiveness is part of leadership, and we often get stuck as far as leaders. I told this story too when we were meeting, that my first employee opinion survey at Purina was awful because I was a lousy leader and I was just learning. And lots of hurtful comments as well as bad numbers. And so I went in the next day, sat in my office, closed the door. I thought, they don't want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to them. Meh, And my boss came in, Neil, and he said, first of all, he picked up a card on my desk and he said, I want you to read this to me. And I said, you can read it. And he said, no, you read it out loud to me. And I did. And it was some kind words from one of my team members. And he said, is that the leader you are today? The person they were writing about in that card? And I said, no. And I said, but I'm mad. I'm hurt. People said awful things in that employee opinion survey. And he said, Kathryn, our job as leaders is to give first and give again. And he said, do you know what the bridge is between giving first and giving again? And he said, 4. I'm not tracking with you. And he said, forgive. And I said, oh, forgiveness. And he said, no, forgiveness is a noun. That's something someone else does. Forgive is a verb. And that's what I want to see you do. Forgive. And that was a powerful lesson for me. And it's one that I had to relearn many, many times in leadership, that part of my job, part of leadership, is forgiving and giving again. And that's another hurdle.
Powerful. Kathryn, how can our audience learn more about your business and your book?
My book is Rockstar Millennials, and also a toolkit that goes along with it, that gives you some of those how-to. Here's a way to activate this concept that we're talking about. You can reach me at rockstarmillennials.com, and you'll also see the podcast there. We're just starting season 4, and it releases every other Wednesday. So go to rockstarmillennials.com. You can subscribe there, and we'll be in touch.
That's awesome. Well, Kathryn, thank you for joining us. There's a lot of great takeaways for our audience. I know that. I'm really excited for this to air. And on behalf of all of us at Midwestern Securities, I'm Mike Graham, and I want to thank our listeners for joining and look forward to seeing them on our next podcast as well. Thank you again. Thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you, Mike.